So on the first night of the DNC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez got a speaking slot. Now, we actually didn't know until like a day or two before the event that she was going to get it. And for a while there, it was looking like both her and Bernie were going to be sort of not giving speeches. And there was a lot of chatter about that. But Bernie got a speaking slot. He spoke on the second day. AOC spoke on the first day. I think she got it in prime time, too. And her speech is causing quite a bit of controversy for a number of reasons. So you have, I've seen many people who are on the left who say, man, she fucking killed it. She's gotten better at this. She's launching herself into some sort of future run, whether it be for the Senate or whether it be for president. And there was some heaping and fawning praise over AOC. I saw that. And then at the same time, I saw others on the left basically absolutely furious about her speech. So we're going to listen, we're going to break it down, and we're going to see what the reality is. Let's go.
Thank you, Chicago, for your energy. Thank you, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, for your vision. Thank you, Chicago, for your energy. Thank you, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, for your vision. And thank you, Joe Biden, for your leadership.
Right off the bat, I already see where the criticism is coming from. Literally nobody is making you do this, right? AOC, you do realize that the reason they put Joe Biden on day one and the reason they pushed him well past prime time is because they are literally trying to hide the fact that Joe Biden is still the president. They're trying to detach themselves from his low poll numbers and his absolute failures in Israel. You do understand that, right? So right off the bat, I understand where the criticisms are coming from. Look, I could understand pre-Gaza genocide. I 100% can understand and sympathize with going to bat for Joe Biden. Because when you look at his economic record, it is significantly better than that of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. He did, in some very clear ways, cut away from the neoliberal consensus. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. The evidence is overwhelming on that. So I understand that, and I was making some of those arguments at the time. Post-Gaza genocide, where Biden is arming and funding Israel on a regular basis, he knows they're not allowing in the aid to get to Palestinians. He knows they're bombing UN buildings and UN workers. He knows they're carpet bombing kids. He knows they've attacked over 30 hospitals. He knows they've attacked every single school in Gaza. He knows the death toll is over 40,000 people. At this point, nobody is making you say positive words. You could have just not brought Joe Biden up. You could have just not brought Joe Biden up. And so then that leads me to ask the question, why are you bringing him up? Either you're just trying to play like good party insider to jockey for position to get ahead, or you sincerely think he's still doing a phenomenal job, which is inconceivable because you yourself has called what's going on in Gaza a genocide. Well, Biden is arming and funding that. There's a massive disconnect. So I already see the problem here. Nobody asked you to do it. You didn't have to do this. There's plenty of speakers who didn't bring up Biden at all. You could have just not brought up Biden. Oh my God. All right, let's keep going.
6 years ago, I was taking omelet orders as a waitress in New York City. I didn't have health insurance. My family was fighting off foreclosure, and we were struggling with bills after my dad passed away unexpectedly from cancer. Like millions of Americans, we were just looking for an honest shake. And we were tired of a cynical politics that seemed blind to the realities of working people. It was then, only through the miracles of democracy and community, that the good people of the Bronx and Queens chose someone like me to elect them in Congress. And America, in my heart, I know from that same cloth of hope and aspiration, we will also elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as presidents and vice presidents of the United States of America. Here tonight because America has before us a rare and precious opportunity. In Kamala Harris, we have a chance to elect a president who is for the middle class because she is from the middle class. She understands the urgency of rent checks and groceries and prescriptions. She is as committed to our reproductive and civil rights as she is to taking on corporate greed. And she is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
That's not true. Oh, my God. If you want to go up there and make the argument for Kamala Harris, I get it. That makes perfect sense. You're at the DNC. Make that argument. But don't lie. That's just not true. The best case you could make for her is that, look, Joe Biden is president. Joe Biden is making all the decisions, and then she just has to sort of go along with what he's doing, even though she may be voicing some concerns behind the scenes, right? That would be fair to say. Now, obviously, you're not going to say that in a speech, but you don't have to say this at all because it's inaccurate. There's no evidence. There's no reason to believe they're working tirelessly to get a ceasefire. Again, if Biden wanted a ceasefire, this is on Biden first and foremost. If he wanted a ceasefire, he could pick up the phone and say, I'm cutting off the money and I'm cutting off the weapons and you're going to stop this today. And then they'd stop it because they have no choice. They know that to keep this going, they need the money, they need the weapons. All you got to do is do that. And that's, like, again, that's bare minimum stuff. In reality, we should be talking about arresting Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and the Israeli commanders who are overseeing and committing this genocide. But again, why the lie? You don't have to lie. That's not true. And if you're telling, like, here's the thing, guys. If you're telling people Kamala Harris is working ceaselessly to get this ceasefire, if you're telling people that, let's assume for a second people believe that. Well, then the air comes out of the tires of the movement to try to force her to get a ceasefire in Gaza, to cut off the money and the weapons, because people, I'm told she's already in favor of it, so why do we need to protest? Why do we need to get out there and make our voices heard? It's gaslighting. This is gaslighting. You can both support Kamala and Tim Walz and also say, hey, the pro-Palestine protesters are right. They should keep applying pressure until they get the bare minimum, which is cutting off the money and the weapons. And that's that. So I'm leaning way more on the side of the critics are right now. But let's keep going.
In Kamala Harris, I see a leader who understands. I see a leader with a real commitment to a better future for working families. And Chicago, we have to help her win. Because we know that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots of greed, trampling on our way of life.
Somebody said on Twitter that, like, every millennial talker can't help when they're giving a speech but to fall into, like, a Martin Luther King cadence. And I kind of see that coming out here.
The truth is, Don, you can't...
Jesse Jackson, look at his face.
...love this country if you only fight for the wealthy and big business. To love this country is to fight for its people. All people, working people, everyday Americans like bartenders and factory workers and fast food cashiers who punch a clock and are on their feet all day in some of the toughest jobs out there. You know,
definitely more economically populist than a lot of the focus of her speeches have been in the past.
Ever since I got elected, Republicans have attacked me by saying that I should go back to bartending. But let me tell you, I'm happy to any day of the week because there is nothing wrong with working for a living.
I'm sorry, that's actually a good-ass line. That's a good-ass line. It's like you're shitting on me by saying I should go back to bartending, but like the implication there is that that's not a serious job, that's not a real job, and the people who do it aren't worthy. And it's like, you're really telling on yourself there. You're really telling on yourself there. You don't respect working people who work that job and those kinds of jobs. That's a good line.
Imagine having leaders in the White House who understand that. Leaders like Kamala and Tim. But Chicago, just because the choice is clear to us does not mean that the path will be easy. Over the next 78 days, we will have to pour every ounce, every minute, every moment into making history on November 5th. But we cannot send Kamala and Tim to the White House alone. Together, we must also elect strong Democratic majorities in the House and in the Senate so that we can deliver on an ambitious agenda for the people. Because if you are a working parent trying to afford rent and childcare, Kamala is for you. If you are a senior who had to go back to work because your retirement didn't stretch far enough, Kamala is for you. If you're an immigrant family just starting your American story, Kamala is for you. America, when we knock on our neighbor's door, organize our communities, and elect Kamala Harris to the presidency on November 5th, we will send a loud message that the people of this nation will not go back. We choose a new path and open the door to a new day, one that is for the people and by the people. Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless.
All right, so breakdown of the speech. She 100% has improved in terms of rhetoric and optics since the last time we've seen her. I don't think there's any doubt about that. What you'll notice is an absolute lack of any sort of weird academia jargon, right? There was no reference to intersectionality. She didn't say Latinx or anything to that effect. There was no overly focused identity-based arguments. And my guess is she's smart enough to have realized that, like, this actually falls massively fucking flat. And I'm talking to, like, a tiny little subset, a subculture of, like, academia lefties when I use that stuff, and I actually look massively, massively disconnected. She definitely more so ramped up the economically populist stuff and arguments in favor of working people. And look, that part is good. I appreciate that. I also just think her overall delivery was better. Certainly in the past, I feel like her speeches seemed a little bit more inauthentic, a little bit more like forced MLK style. This was a little bit more toned down on that front. She seems a little bit more comfortable in her own body delivering this speech. I think the crowd was clearly into it. But again, the big strikes against it are, it was the big lie, right? The big lie. Kamala's working really hard to get a ceasefire. That's just not true. That's just not true. Don't say that. That's not true. And she could have just she didn't have to, say all those things about Biden at the beginning. Thank you, Joe. She didn't have to do that. She knows he's committing a genocide. Her own word is genocide to describe it. You didn't need to say the Biden thing, and you didn't need to lie and say Kamala's working for a ceasefire. That's not true. You could have just had a generic line about, we have to get a ceasefire. We have to end the war, right? If you were really being bold, we have to end the genocide, or we have to cut off the weapons. So those are the big strikes against it. But in terms of general approach to the speech, how she delivered it compared to previous speeches she's given, she's definitely improved, and I can see why. I can see why there was a split. I can see why some people were like, oh man, she's got a political future and she's gotten better and, this was great. And I can see why people say that, but I also 100% see why a lot of people still feel like massively betrayed on it. You can't call what's happening in Gaza a genocide and then heap fawning praise on the guy who's arming and funding the genocide and lie and say Kamala's working hard for a ceasefire. Look, we got to be honest with ourselves, guys. Eyes wide open going into this thing. Best case scenario with Kamala, and Crystal made this point, I think is brilliant. Best case scenario with Kamala vis-a-vis Gaza is she gets in there and she understands and realizes, oh, Netanyahu is actually a partisan hack. He is basically a Republican. He wants Donald Trump to win. He wants the Republicans to win. I'm no longer going to play this game where we act like, oh no, the Democratic Party and the Republican, we're all friends with Netanyahu, and he is neutral when it comes to internal affairs of the United States, and so he gets whatever he wants. From a rank politics perspective of Kamala trying to cover her own ass, she might say, we got to distance ourselves more from Netanyahu. We have to not take the exact same path as Joe Biden here. We have to, at the very least, credibly have a credible threat to cut the weapons off, to force them to stop doing the genocide. She has to know the longer that goes on, the worse it looks for her, right? And from a political perspective, she doesn't want to have this albatross hanging around her neck. And so from a standard normie Democrat perspective, okay, I got to go in a different direction. That's the best we could hope from Kamala. But we don't even know if that's going to happen. It's possible she just continues Biden's policy. So we need to be clear-eyed about that and understand that that means the pro-Palestine protesters are correct. You should be on their side, where they're saying, many of them have said, look, we want to vote for Kamala Harris. Just give us some sort of guarantee you're going to cut the weapons off. That's not unreasonable. That's not unreasonable. The real thing she should do is cut the weapons off and arrest Netanyahu and the other fucking war criminals, right? Force a peace deal on Israel. That's what she should actually do. But people, they're willing to accept just stop the fucking genocide, stop arming and funding it. So be on their side, but she wasn't. So I understand the praise and I understand the criticism. That's my breakdown. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.